a national town hall for May 31st, 2026. And I'm Alan Minsky, Executive Director, Progressive Democrats of America, here with the PDA team. And every Sunday at this time, we have a town hall. Sort of fell into this peculiar time slot back in the COVID era when we had what proved to be a very popular weekly update on the state of the pandemic and the science involved in trying to contend with it, the medical science, the biological science, and the epidemiology. And we just drew this large audience every Sunday, and we decided to continue with the time. And of course, it's a time where not many other organizations would think to organize this kind of national town hall, and but a very good time to do it as well because for instance, one of the traditions in American journalism and American television has been these Sunday talk shows in the morning, where Sunday is a day in which there's consideration of the sort of larger breadth of the political situation. And that's what we do here. And then, of course, we also focus on with great precision on local issues and local candidates. Of course, Progressive Democrats of America was founded as a federal PAC endorsing federal candidates. So it's primary season for us right now. And of course, now we have a lobbying wing, as well as we do have with the lobbying wing, an affiliated research organization as well. And so today I believe after Tuesday, we will have hit, at least in terms of not the number of states, but the number of congressional districts, about the halfway point in the primary season. And we have today, because Tuesday is as busy a day for congressional primaries as any on the calendar. I think one day may exceed it, in part because California is up, and there are a number of states where there are primaries. We're going to actually have 4 different PDA-endorsed congressional candidates featured on this town hall, and of course, mention of others in California who are also endorsed. Now, last week we had 2 exceptional candidates on who have their primaries on Tuesday as well. Dr. Hamaway in New Jersey's 12th district. Am I getting that right, folks? I believe so. Bonnie Watson Coleman's district, and with a very, very good shot of winning the primary. And it's a safe Democratic seat. So if he can win the primary and lift up and win that, and that's a very, very important race. And boy, were the attacks against him absurd over the past week. He's somebody who's gone and been a doctor on the front lines across the world, and he went to Gaza twice. That's how unbelievably heroic and brave he is, and a fantastic candidate. It would be brilliant to have him in the House of Representatives, and there's a real shot at winning that. And also a great shot at winning the primary up in Montana's Western District, based out of Missoula. We had a brilliant candidate join us, and unfortunately, I'm right now forgetting his name. And but he is an endorsed candidate by PDA. I'll get you that name in a second. And he is got a great shot of winning the primary on Tuesday as well. But today we have 4 candidates. And by the way, actually, probably be easier if somebody from staff can just chime in and remind me the name of the fantastic former fireman who was lost his job to Doge and then now is running in Missoula's in Montana's district up there. But of course, Sam Forstag, and what an incredible guy. And I apologize to Sam. But as you can see, there are so many candidates. And for me, I live in California, of course, work in coordination with Mike Fowler, who oversees the California PAC. And there are so many close races on so many levels here in the city. I live in Los Angeles. There's a very, very competitive mayor's race. My particular city council district isn't too competitive. My House district is interesting to see who will get into a runoff versus Jimmy Gomez. And then there's state assembly races that are very close all across the state Senate races, highly contested. And by the way, there are only 40 members of the California State Senate, and that's relevant for one of our guests today. One of our featured Congress people who we've endorsed, which is the California 11th district, where Scott Wiener is assumed that he'll likely get into the runoff. We are not endorsing Scott Wiener. He is a state senator, and that state Senate seat, all of the district of California 11th is inside the larger state Senate district. The state Senate districts in California are over 1 million people per district, whereas the House seats are roughly 750,000 people per district. Before we have the endorsed candidate on, Connie Chan, And also we'll be joined by Hemming Cho, who's PDA's San Francisco coordinator. We'll be joined by Brian Varela, who's running for Congress in New Jersey 7th. And we have been so impressed with Mr. Varela's race, his policy positions, his energy, his approach to his race. And we are very proud to endorse him in a very competitive primary in New Jersey 7th. And we'll be hearing about that. He'll be our first guest up in about 10 minutes. And then for about 15 minutes, we'll talk about the 11th district, of which there has uh, been a few waves of controversy, as one can imagine. This is the seat to replace Nancy Pelosi, and there are two very strong progressive candidates running in it. And we'll talk about that when we introduce a short video that Connie has shared with us. And then after that, we'll hear from Mike Masuda, I believe, and he is. Hold on a second, guys. Trying to get back to the okay. And he is running in California's fifth district with a real chance of getting into the runoff in that district. It is all the California districts, of course, were redrawn, and he's running in California's fifth. Then after that, at the top of the hour, so at 1:45, we'll hear from Mike. In about 2:05, we'll be joined by a candidate who I think is just a spectacular candidate who's building a great grassroots movement around his candidacy, and I think that's very exemplary. There simply are not opinion polls in many of these districts in California. There's obviously been an incredible focus on the governor's race. I'll have a word to say about that in a second, the governor's race. And some of the other higher profile races. A lot of polls exist in the San Francisco race. Maybe that's not surprising. But out in California third, where Chris is running there, as far as he knows and I know, there are no polls. I think campaigns have internal polls. Some public broadcasting coverage of it suggested that Chris has this is now a strongly Democratic district that includes the southeastern portion of the Sacramento metro sprawl. And Sacramento has, 2 million odd people in it. And then it goes out to the Sierra Nevadas to the west. It's redrawn. The third district used to not include that part, so much of, or much at all of Sacramento metro, and go all the way down the east side of the state. And it was a Republican district. This has now been drawn to be a solidly blue district. And given that, we could have two Democrats in the runoff, and they could be an incumbent from a different number district, a moderate Democrat named Ami Bera, and Chris Bennett. We could have one of those two against a Republican, or we could, so either Chris or Ami. And Chris will be joining us at 2:05, and I think people are going to be really, really, really impressed with Chris Bennett. Okay, so I'll be tossing over to Mike Fox with our PDA to-dos for the week. And before that, a little bit more about California. For those of you not in California, first of all, I apologize to the degree to which we have so much on these calls about the state of California. And I'm sure part of that comes from my living here, and I apologize to the degree to which that's the case. But, California has been a single party state basically since, and Mike Thaler, feel free to chime in if you like if I get any of these dates wrong, but roughly around the time that Barack Obama became president. That's the waning of the Arnold Schwarzenegger era. And since that time, the Democratic Party has either had almost supermajorities or supermajorities as they have now in both the state assembly and the state senate, plus a Democratic governor. However, while there's been a maintenance of a set of public policies that the rest of the country looks out towards California and sees as being very progressive, probably most conspicuously at this hour, the gasoline taxes that, of course, fund a significant amount of state spending, make gasoline more expensive than any other state, and of course, motivated in part by a desire or willingness among Californians to try to, in spite of the incredible car culture of California, most notably with LA being the first sort of urban sprawl city, all organized around the automobile in the post-World War II era more than any other place in the world, and then other suburbias, of course, spread like wildfire across America. So cars are very much a part of California culture. There's enough environmental consciousness that the public was willing to go along with that as a mechanism. Of course, it's ostensibly a poor tax because it's a sales tax, as opposed to, but there is a progressive income tax here as well. Again, a product of, even when you had California governors, a decent kind of progressive undertow that existed. But these are legacy things, and not a lot that has been really promoting, classical left public policy positions has really been foregrounded at the state level in this era of Democratic dominance. And I think when you consider broad stroke, the reason for that is that in a one-party state, all the major corporations in the country have gotten their fangs. They don't care about the Republican Party. They want influence in the Democratic Party. And you see that. And that's really what I think we're seeing now is whether Tom Steyer can get into the runoff, if it's Becerra, two Democrats versus each other. Seems likely that Becerra at the polls suggest will get in, but you never know. And maybe it'll be Steyer and the Republican Hilton, or Becerra and Hilton, or Steyer versus Becerra, but those seem like the three candidates who could get in. And I hope that Steyer does get in because the progressive agenda will be debated then, whether it's against a Republican, in which case I think Steyer would win, or against Becerra, where I think it would be a very close runoff race. And of course, it'd be much, much more beneficial to get two Democrats in because then we'll have suppressed Republican turnout and more Democratic victories in congressional seats. So let's hope both Democrats get in. And it's going to be very close as to whether Steyer gets in. I know it sticks in my throat to endorse a billionaire, but Padaka has endorsed Steyer. I'll be voting for Steyer, and I encourage everybody on the call who's voting in California, either for pragmatic reasons, so there are other progressives still on the ballot, or for clearly a recognition that he would be the best of the candidates that are there to make the runoff. I encourage people to vote for Steyer. It's going to be very, very close. There are a lot of close races other than that on Tuesday here in California, and one up in Montana and a couple in New Jersey. We got to really push for victories. But right now, Mike Fox, take it away with our PDA to-dos for this week, and we have 3 to 4 minutes before we introduce our candidate in New Jersey, 7th, Mr. Brian Varela. Mike, take it away.
And can you hear me? So sorry,
Yes.
multitasking on the back end here. My camera's being wonky, but we shall overcome. Here we go. All right. To do number one, gang, as always, revel in the fact that you're surrounded by people who get it here each and every Sunday, 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific. We are here pumping each other up, getting ready for the week of work before us. So I thank you. You make me literally healthier just by being here. And I hope everybody in this room feels that, okay? To do number two, take notes. We're going to be throwing a bunch of good information at you here. So that needs to be acted upon over the next few days. So please do make sure your notepad is at the ready. So from a time and treasure standpoint, number one time related item is all together now. Phone bank, phone bank, phone bank, phone bankers. Toss in the chat that you phone bank. Invite folks to pile on. We have to have the phones on fire between now and the end of day Tuesday. We've got a gazillion great candidates that we need to get over the finish line. And that only happens if we're talking to voters. So, number one, thank you to all of the phone bankers on the call. Everybody show some love to them. Number two, become one. We've got a goal of 10 new phone bankers just from this event here. If you've never done it before, it's a piece of cake, I promise you. We take you by the hand. You're talking to PDA people. Easy stuff, okay? But the key is we got to be making the phones ring, okay? So let's make that happen. I'll be back up at the top of the hour to see where we're at on that goal, okay? And then number two, from a treasure standpoint, time and treasure, the two T's. We at PDA take great pride in the fact that the vast majority of our work is done by volunteer labor. We honestly believe that's the best case scenario, that people are taking their civic responsibility seriously, right? However, we got to keep the lights on. Zoom costs money. Our database management tool costs money. Blah, blah, blah. We'd also like to be able to bring on board a couple of energetic, on the ground organizers here. And the only way that that happens is, since we don't have billionaires with us, it's us in this room, gang. So all we're looking for here is solidarity. If you can do $100 or more, please do. But if you can't, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Nothing but love for anybody who can just throw $1 in. And our goal is to have at least 10 new sustainers, folks who do a monthly. If it's $2, $5, $10, whatever it is. But that is our goal. And the way you win in this business is you establish aggressive goals and attain them. So let's make that happen. We'll be back at the top of the hour with where we're at on that. And back to you, Alan. And you may want to go to Susan now.
Well, Susan, can we go to you and we can have Susan's going to read a statement from Donna Smith, who can't be with us today. But I'd like to go to our candidate, Varela, and then we'll try to bring Donna in either at 1:30 to 1:33 or right before the 2 o'clock hour, depending on how we're doing for time. I hope that's okay, Susan. but I believe we have Brian Varela here with us, and he only has 15 minutes, and this is a hugely important race. I hope that's okay, Susan. Does that sound good, Susan?
Whatever
Gilbert?
works for you is just great.
Thank you so much. We're going to be hearing from Donna Smith via Susan Gilbert, and Donna has a nice inspirational message for us. And Brian Varela is running for Congress in New Jersey's 7th District, which is held by Republican Thomas Kean. This is one of the toss-up races in the country. Thomas Kean barely won the race last time. It's a district that both Republicans and Democrats are going to be very focused upon. There are four Democratic candidates running in the primary, and all of them have raised a good amount of money, and the progressive champion among them is the candidate, of course, that PDA has endorsed, that I am very honored to introduce right now, Brian Varela. And welcome, Brian, to our National Town Hall. And tell us about yourself and why you're running for Congress.
Alan, I think Mike Fox needs to make him a co-host so he
He's
can
co-host.
unmute.
Okay, great.
Brian, you're up, brother. You should be able to unmute.
Brian Varela, are you with us? If it's possible that he missed the cue and has stepped aside. He's with us, right, Mike Fox?
Yeah, I'm staring at Brian Varela. He's co-hosted.
Maybe Susan, if it's okay, why don't we go then back to Susan? And Susan, why don't you read the letter from Brian, and we'll bing Brian and get him on right after you. I apologize, Susan, for the shakeup. But take it away, Susan Gilbert, if you can. The letter from, of course, PDA's, our advisory board chair, Donna Smith.
Okay, so this is a letter Donna would like me to share with everybody. It says, Dear PDA family, I cannot be with you this week while I am celebrating my 50th wedding anniversary. You might think that's because we're having big doings with our 6 children, our 15 grandchildren, and now our 21 plus great grandchildren. It is quite the opposite. Like so many families, ours spread all over the country, and we had big doings back on our 48th. We might see a couple of folks over the summer, and that will be great. In our old age, we find not only do we slowly find ourselves less self-sufficient and sometimes feel like we are returning to a more dependent state, like a child or even a toddler at times. For our older friends, you know what I'm talking about. Yet our brains and our hearts have only grown, searched, lost, and loved so much that we can hold an ever enlarging space of openness, tolerance, and love empty until we fill it and stretch it again. While I cannot be with you today, it would mean a lot to me if you would stretch yourselves today to welcome younger leaders, younger brains with younger dreams and knowledge into your lives intentionally. Just love them, give them tolerance, openness, and the love they need to fully embrace what we have all been given, our humanity. If only we will see how delightful that can be at every turn. Thank you all for what you do. Peace and power together. Donna. P.S. Throw some pennies in PDA's tip jar for us, won't you? PDA needs us all.
Thank you so much. That's beautiful. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that according to the evidence of the return ballot so far in California, the turnout has been very low. It's attributed largely to confusion about who people are going to choose to vote for in the governor's race. But it's exceptionally low among young voters. And this is really incumbent upon progressives to make clear that we as a political formation represent the politics that young America supports. And I think that's very true. By the way, of the candidates we have on today, I do know Chris Bennett is quite a young man. And I believe that Mike is also not an older candidate. But I do know that Chris is very young, and I really appreciate Donna's message. And with that, Brian Varela, are you able to join us now?
Yes, I am here. Thank you for
Oh,
bearing with me.
and you yourself do not look like an old American. You look like a younger American. So tell us about yourself and why you're running for Congress. And I just could not be more impressed with all your policy positions, their forthrightness, their clarity. But please, yes, tell everyone about yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you all so much. I'm a first generation Colombian American, grew up working class. My parents had a variety of blue collar jobs growing up, so got a lot of that experience firsthand. I'm someone who, like a lot of people in this country, had to fight to pay my way through school. I had got a full-time job. I finished in 3.5 years working full-time, going to school full-time. Um, After college, I fought to keep my family afloat when my mom got sick and my parents went out of business. That experience really opened my eyes, especially now during the campaign, just thinking about the fact that I was able to step up for my parents. But how many families are out there that have a healthcare crisis and can go bankrupt or could lose their home? I mean, to me, that's just absolutely unacceptable. It's why I'm so passionate for Medicare for all. My mom unfortunately passed 2 years later, and when that happened, my my little one just walked in. Mi
Mm.
amor,
Sure.
estoy en una reunión, okay? Sorry, guys. She has
Oh
no
no,
concept
that's
of
great. That's
this.
beautiful. Yeah.
Dile a la mami que ya voy, okay? Yo ya voy para allá.
Oh,
Sorry,
that's great.
everyone.
Thank you. No, it's beautiful. Thank you.
And so so when that happened, at 24 years old, I took on raising my younger brother, who was 13 at the time, and that really showed me how difficult it is for a lot of families in this country who are struggling to keep up with their full-time job and keep the bills going. And all right, now she's locked in. Give me 2 seconds. My
Oh no, take your
apologies.
time.
It'll
And
be literally 3 seconds. I'm just gonna
okay.
open this door for her because
Uh,
it's a little.
yes, and again, this is a race where to see who will be challenging Tom Keene, and it again the situation in New Jersey is now much more open, and just in 2024, very rapidly, more quickly than anybody expected, the legendary and notorious New Jersey county ballot line system ended, and consequently, as I joked, we now have democracy coming to New Jersey. So here
That's
we have,
right.
yeah, a great
That's
team, very
right.
challenging. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
please go ahead.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so I'll kind of fast forward a little bit to the campaign, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
When I decided to take this on, I knew that I was coming in as an underdog, right? We don't have ties to a political dynasty or to the establishment or to the type of corporate dems throughout the state or the pundits or any of these people. But one of the things that we have been doing here in the state for years is we were organizing, right? I
Mhm.
personally knocked over 3,000 doors for the Democratic nominee here in this district in 2024. I have
Mhm.
worked very hard to win seats for Democrats, especially in the red leaning parts of the district, in and out of the district, actually. I have literally built and organized committees from scratch, from the ground up, and have done it successfully to the point where we're winning Republican seats. And
Mhm.
so I wanted to go ahead and take a stab. And I'm proud to say that a self-admitted underdog and someone that was written off by the New Jersey political establishment has emerged as one of the front runners in this race. You know,
Mhm.
we've raised over $1.9 million, but what I'm even more proud of is the coalition that we've built. Right, we've been endorsed by over nearly 100 Democratic leaders right here in the district. Right, and in New Jersey, as Alan was alluding, right, with the line, New Jersey's a little bit old school when it comes to the way that politics works in the state. It's still very much party boss driven. So when
Mhm.
we get nearly 100 people behind us who are signing their name to our campaign, they're putting up real political capital because they believe in what we're doing and they know that we've got the fight in us and they know that we have what it takes to flip this district. Flipping this district means taking back the House, and we've got a congressman who's been totally absent. He's been absent for medical reasons the last few months, but
Right.
even before that, zero. He's the one who invented the no town hall playbook. He was doing that before all the other Republicans caught on. Um, and so we've had a lot of success, right? And it's a we've been endorsed by the progressive leader in the state, Mayor Baraka. We've been endorsed by amazing organizations such as yours.
Mhm.
We've got more labor endorsements than anyone else in this race. We've been endorsed. I mean, if you go on our website, I mean, I'm really proud of the support that we've built. And to Alan's point, now that the line is gone, this is our chance to put up a fighter, right? I think that a lot of people on this call would agree that the status quo is what's gotten here, right? Playing it quote unquote safe is what's gotten here, right? And what these folks don't realize is that we're using an old playbook. We're using a playbook that no longer applies because the Trump administration has changed the game entirely. And this is time, it's not the time to play it safe or to walk a fine line. It's a time to be bold. It's a time to be courageous. And that's why when I started this race, people were writing me off because I was talking about Medicare for all. And guess what? It's resonating. It is resonating. We're expecting a very, very close race here in our primary. Um, And the way that I tell people, look, just because you're a Republican doesn't mean that you're immune from the national economy. So when I'm talking about Medicare for all, when I'm talking about universal child care, right? Like these are things that are affecting working class and middle class families the most. And I think that folks are becoming wise to the grift in the Trump administration, right? The other thing too in this district is that in 24, they peeled off young voters, they peeled off men, they peeled off Hispanic voters. I'm literally a young Hispanic male, right? I'm the only person in this race that's positioned to peel back a lot of the votes that we lost in 24. But more importantly, I'm the only candidate in this race that's actually been working with those communities. I think I've spent like 3 out of the last 7 nights at the Laney Hall. I'm sure
Yeah.
you're all tracking that, right?
Hmm.
I've been doing outreach to Hispanic communities and minority communities all over the district, and I think we've built a strong campaign as a result of that. So, Alan, I want to be mindful on time. I can keep going, but I want to be mindful on time and just make sure that
You
I'm.
know, and actually, Tyler Rivera, if you have a question for Brian, I know that Tyler, one of the steering committee members of Young Progressive Democrats of America, and fitting with Donna's letter, is familiar with your district and New Jersey politics in general. He's slumming it in Chicago these days, but he's in New Jersey and in New Jersey and certainly by heart even to this day. So, Tyler, if you do have a question for Brian, but it's a very interesting race. One of the things that strikes me about it is of the four candidates that all have raised almost equal amounts of money. It does seem like it's coming down to between you and someone named Rebecca Bennett, and you are substantially more progressive than Rebecca Bennett on public policy positions. But I don't believe the other two either are elected officials. That maybe one of them is, but I haven't
Mm.
done that research. So that's an odd thing to have four people raise a decent amount of money. The other two have fallen back away. It seems like you and Bennett are right now at the top of the polls. And what can you say if you had a message just for the people of the seventh district, and for everyone on the call here, because we're looking to motivate people right now, folks, to volunteer with PDA. Also, I believe Mike Fox and Susan will put into the chat two things: a volunteer sign up link and a way to donate to Brian's campaign with a split donation to PDA, because we are going to mobilize, get people onto the phone banks that Brian has to support his candidacy in the next 2 days. And of course, if you really want to put in some good shifts, the earlier shifts will be in Jersey. The later shifts will be out in Montana and California. But let's get these early shifts in for Dr. Hamaway and for Brian Varela in California, in New Jersey. Sorry about that. And if you were to say to the people in the district and people on the call right now why it is so important, given the public policies that you endorse, that they are the policies that are suited for the people in the seventh and for the people in the country, since you'll be representing your district and all of America.
Look, Donald Trump beat us for a variety of reasons in 24. One of the reasons is I truly believe he outmessaged us on affordability.
Mhm.
And that was the top issue in 24. Then we saw a swing back towards the Democratic Party in 25 for the exact same reason. And I've got news for you. Things are not better now than they were in 2024. And I think affordability is going to keep being the same issue, right?
Mhm.
One of the things that I alluded to earlier is that just because you're a Republican doesn't mean that you're immune from the national economy. And I entirely mean that. Right. And I think that when it comes to general election voters in this particular district, it's not about the Democratic answer or the Republican answer. It's about the correct answer. Right. And what I mean by that is, what are the policies that are going to most benefit working and middle class families? What are the policies that are going to narrow the wealth gap? And I will tell you, it is not subsidizing tax breaks for billionaires on the backs of working class and middle class families. Right. It's policies like universal child care. And I make an entirely economic issue around that. It's policies around solving the housing crisis and making sure that people can get into starter homes and middle homes, right? And we've got policies around that as well. It's the investment in renewable. And while we all know on this call that it's important to save the planet, it's making the economic argument, right? When it comes to the environment, it's not just the moral argument, but it's the economic argument, and the fact that we've got an administration that has pretty much jeopardized the potential for millions of jobs. Right. We all know what happened when we electrified America, right? We created new jobs, new businesses, new industries, and we widened the middle class. It's the same exact case studies when it comes to renewable energies and investing into green projects, right? And so if you can communicate that to a family in this district, those are the policies that are going to create jobs. Those are the policies that are going to create good union jobs. Those are the policies that are going to improve people's livelihoods and their affordability here in the district. And for the sake of time, I'm just mentioning a few, but My entire focus on anything that I talk about always goes, whether it's talking about healthcare or housing or energy or childcare or education, it always goes back to affordability and the overall American economy.
Yeah, and I mean, for what it's worth, Rebecca Bennett definitely seems to be casting herself as what one would call a moderate, even conservative Democrat. Just I hadn't really checked out her stuff, and I certainly believe your emphasis. And I mean, she doesn't support Medicare for all, talking about safe neighborhoods and national security priorities. I probably have differences on national security issues too, which is great because we clearly need a different foreign policy in this country right now. But hey, I look, Tyler, if you can unmute and ask a question. If not, I'm going to just channel you and ask a question that I think you would ask of Brian. If you want to go ahead, Tyler, because I know that Tyler is very attentive to transportation issues in Jersey, and and I know these are super important, and your thoughts on funding transportation, improving transportation infrastructure in New Jersey. You're just end with that, and then your final thoughts as we move on to over to San Francisco as we leave New Jersey 7. But your final thoughts, Brian. Yeah.
Cool. Um, yeah, so, and I did see a few hands go up. So if someone wants to just interrupt me, please feel free. But yeah, look, ultimately, we've got Martin Tallarico who's raising his hand.
Oh, it's okay. We don't have time for people right now.
Oh, okay, no
Tyler
worries.
has,
I'll wrap it up then. My
yeah.
apologies.
Thank you. No
Uh,
problem. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, look, ultimately, we have a war that no one wants. We've got a war that's raising energy rates here at home. We've got a war that is putting our troops at risk. We've got an administration that is using things like this war to distract from things like the Epstein files, right? We've got a rogue agency that is utilizing our immigrant brothers and sisters and holding them up as scapegoats once again to distract from the blatant corruption around the Epstein files and this Trump administration and his family enriching themselves to the tunes of billions of dollars. We need a fighter. I've shared a little bit about my life. I've been a fighter my whole life, and that's the fight that I want to take down to DC. I want to go and fight for Medicare for all. I want to fight to improve affordability through policies around housing, universal childcare, and I want to fight to defend our democracy, right? There's a lot of things that are wrong with our democracy right now, whether it's the complete abuse of the presidential power or the total lack of spying within Congress. But one that hits here in my heart is ICE, right? We have, while I think most people on this call would agree, we need some sort of immigration enforcement. This is absolutely not it. We need to dismantle Trump's ICE. And as taxpayers, whether you're on the left or on the right, we should be livid that we are spending 3 times more money to deport someone's grandmother than what we're spending to protect this country from terrorists. We have money for a war. We've got $1.5 trillion for the Pentagon, but we don't have money for housing, for healthcare, for food, for education. None of that makes any sense. And so I want to take that fight down to Washington with your support. Please donate. But what would mean even more, our primary is on Tuesday. If you can volunteer for us, we've got phone banking opportunities, text banking opportunities. That would mean the world to us.
Brian, I so look forward to working with you in whatever capacity, but primarily because let's lift you to victory on Tuesday, and I look forward to meeting you as you are sworn in early January to the U.S. House of Representatives. Thank you so much. And if Colombia makes the final in the World Cup, let's talk about that too. Because they'll be playing in New Jersey. So
Sounds good, Alan. We'd love to have you guys out here. Thank you all so much. Take care.
Thank you, and thank you for what you're doing, stepping up and running. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great campaign. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And so right away now we're going to segue into we're going to take a breath because what we're about to jump into right now is a race. Of course, the New Jersey 7th is going to get so much attention as a toss-up district, and to have a great progressive champion like Brian Varela represent will be brilliant. And I think I just think he'll resonate more with voters than a moderate Democrat against Keene. I really, really believe that. So let's get Brian elected in California's 11th district. It's the battle among 3 relatively high-profile candidates to be the next person to represent California's 11th district that's been represented by Nancy Pelosi. And it's the San Francisco City District. And of course, San Francisco is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful city. And it has had such an disproportionate impact on American national, and particularly American National Democratic Party politics in recent years. Kamala Harris comes out of San Francisco, the long time iconic Speaker of the House or leader of the Democratic caucus. Nancy Pelosi comes out of San Francisco. Now Gavin Newsom, governor of California and soon to be presidential candidate, comes out of San Francisco, where he was once mayor. And there's reasons for that, of course. There's incredible amounts of money there. And it is while it's north of quote unquote north of Silicon Valley, it more than San Jose is the capital of Silicon Valley. The money that has poured into the city has in many ways distorted the city so tremendously, made life for working class people that are very difficult. Affordability is off the charts in terms of an issue. And we are very proud at PDA to have endorsed Connie Chan, who has been a real progressive champion. And I believe it's called the Board of Supervisors. Is that correct, Ken and Joe? Because we're going to be joined by him and Joe in a second. Our activists in San Francisco and PDA activists around the country are the type of people who engage with the progressives in city and local government and county government, state government, and of course nationally too. But to have a champion like Connie on this board that is the essential deliberative body for the governor of San Francisco, they get a deep experience with her and they know her to be an across the board progressive and a champion for working people in San Francisco. And really, in the politics of that city recently, there have been as many of those as there maybe were, 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago because of the money in San Francisco distorting the politics. So our PDA members like Hemming know who a working class champion is, and they also know all of her positions on whatever things she may be not completely, associated with as policy issues, and they understand her to be a true progressive. Well, a controversy boiled up in the past few days, and here to tell us about that and why Connie Chan is the right person for us to be supporting. And I'll opine on the race and the other characters involved in a second, but we certainly need a progressive from this district, and we can win it in a runoff. It will be almost certainly two Democrats in the runoff in November. Hemming, what are your thoughts on where things are right now?
Hi, everyone. So nice to see you all here. Really appreciate the time to take a look at Connie's campaign. Connie is an amazing progressive champion. She's backed by all of the left and labor organizations in San Francisco, and she's been doing work for decades. And the fact that she's an immigrant, Chinese American, I believe she's Cantonese, mainly speaking, as well. She came here from Hong Kong when she was 13. She would be an incredible advocate for us in Washington. People know her. We've seen her do great work. I wanted to read a few things from Dean Preston, the supervisor who worked with her on the Board of Supervisors. Something that he points out is that she immediately had the courage to speak out on just causes such as supporting his resolution for a ceasefire in Gaza well before it became widely acceptable a position as it is today. She has always been a strong advocate and ally for tenants' rights, affordable housing, and working people. And that Dean Preston, who is one of our most beloved socialist progressive candidates, 100% endorses Connie Chan and only Connie Chan for this office and worked with her closely for 4 years. I just wanted to point those things out because I think that it's really easy if you have $10 million of your own money to pour into a campaign and to put all kinds of flyers into people's mailboxes and buy really big signs, but nobody on the ground actually has ever met you in the decades of years of doing left organizing here, that it's really a shame to not endorse a progressive candidate and to do things for the movement, for the people, for the left, and not just yourself. Connie is such an outspoken advocate for working people on across the board and has been very anti-war and down the line is aligned with PDA politics. So I wholeheartedly endorse her. I put money into her coffers, and I've been telling everybody and texting everybody to vote for Connie. So also I wanted to point out that 13% of the Chinese speaking voters have filled out their ballots, which is higher than the, I think, 10% of San Franciscans who've now sent in their ballots early. So I think people are holding on to their ballots because of the gubernatorial race. So whatever you can do now is still going to have an impact. People are walking their ballots in. And as you know, even in a bigger race, even in San Francisco, we are going to have a lower turnout. And so those motivated voters like ourselves are going to decide this race.
And I believe we have a short video from Connie that we can play. And do we have that ready and queued up to go, Mike or Tyler or Mike?
I sent both of them to Mike.
And Tyler is in charge of this. You got it, Tyler?
Yep, they're all queued up. I just gave a thumbs up.
Okay, let's roll with the first one that thanks PDA, the short one.
Hi, I'm Connie Chan. I'm running for Congress in San Francisco, and I'm very excited to announce that we've been endorsed by the Progressive Democrats of America. Thank you so much for your endorsement. We're a few days to our June 2nd primary. If you would like to join us to phone bank and get out the vote and visibility, please visit ConnieChanSF.com. See you then and there.
And do you want to run the other one right now, right back to back, and then we'll go back to Hemming and talk about the parameters of the race?
I'm running for Congress because many families are struggling in San Francisco and across the nation. Many families cannot afford health care, cannot afford child care, cannot really afford to put food on the table, and they certainly cannot spend $10 million to buy an election. I am a first-generation immigrant, Chinese-American woman who grew up in San Francisco's Chinatown. I certainly understand the struggles of working families. This is why in Congress I will throw down to fight to make sure that we have health care, that working families have affordable child care and good quality education, and to make sure that we have food security. Our vote is our voice, so let's get out the vote.
And then so this is a race right now where there is a state senator named Scott Wiener who's decidedly more in the moderate lane, and he has been polling in the lead, which isn't surprising because his district is state Senate districts in California are larger than congressional districts. There's only 4 state senators, and the entirety of the congressional district fits inside his Senate district. But he is not polling such that he is more than he would be ahead of the 2 progressives who are running in the progressive lane add up, which is Connie Chan versus Shaikat Chakrabarty. And Shaikat is somebody who did get in the race before Pelosi dropped out. And so he jumped in not to run against Wiener and Connie Chan initially, but to run. He kept his campaign going after Pelosi dropped out. And of course, he's best known as somebody who was with AOC as she ran for Congress in 2018. Very much an advocate for the digital platforms as being essential to political campaigns, and worked on Bernie Sanders' campaign in 2016, and then was AOC's first chief of staff, but resigned rather quickly with some degree of controversy around his resignation. Look, I don't want to say anything negative about him. It's my feeling that the difference between on public policy, where he stands, and where Scott Wiener stands, if it does end up in a runoff between Shaikat and Wiener, I would encourage PDA members to endorse Shaikat in the runoff. He certainly is a strong advocate for all of the policy positions that really anchor PDA's policy positions. However, we, of course, are a grassroots up organization, and our congressional endorsements are determined by our activists in the area, and we put a poll out. And the poll went to everybody in the district, in our database, and the result was very, very overwhelming. It was about the ratio was, I think, about 9-1 for Connie Chan and over Shaikat, and I think that's reflective again of our base members really having a relationship and understanding Connie to be a true progressive. And I looked out on this, and of course, I'm aware of Shaikat and his contributions to the progressive left and his voice on the national stage. And I became increasingly aware about the great work that Connie has done on the Board of Supervisors. And I, of course, will always champion people who are of and from the local working class, who have been locally active, especially to be in the U.S. House of Representatives, been locally active, supporting the working class, and then also held to the policy platform that PDA supports. We have very clear, if you look at our endorsements, she received 100% vote supporting our positions, as did Shaikat. They both filled out our questionnaire. But the results of the poll were very clear, unequivocal, and I saw that the people in San Francisco PDA were very confident about Connie being the representative they'd support. So, some controversy bubbled up today. I don't think it changes anything. Largely, and Hemming you can reflect on this afterwards, and then of course we'll go to Mike for the final segment in a few minutes. Before the top of the hour, we go to Chris Bennett, two other California endorsed candidates. But you know, what apparently happened is that the candidate is powerless to stop someone buying ads and supporting their campaign or attacking their opponents. And money that can be traceable to the APAC networks have done this. And if you see the ads, I haven't seen the ads. My understanding is they do boost Connie as well as because they perceive this as who's going to get into the runoff because they're both in about the 20% range and supports. I think Connie's ahead in some polls. Other ones maybe had Shaikat ahead, but it's close. Connie certainly has momentum. She's received some very, very high profile endorsements in recent days that were expected to really boost the campaign. And so these came out. And yeah, your thoughts on everything, because it's something that Connie Chan had no hand in whatsoever, is my understanding. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. That is a really great sum up. Something else I wanted to mention too is that none of these polls were done in Mandarin or Cantonese or Russian or any of the languages or Spanish.
I saw that. Yeah, that's right.
And 25% of the voters in the city are Asian. A large percentage of that, maybe 90%, are Chinese Americans. So it's really critical for people to realize that these polls are not accurately reflecting who the voters are. Also, very few people, I believe, under 50 are answering any calls or doing any polls. And so I think that it's a more conservative base that is responding to polls. I do think that it's possible for people to, I think it's impossible if you actually look at who is supporting each one for you to think that there are two really good progressives in this race. Because if all of the labor organizations, the nurses, the teachers, people who've actually worked with her, people who are in her district, and people who are anti-war and pro-healthcare want Connie to win, I can't imagine that people would look at everyone in this race and say, yes, there are two progressives. It's true that Scott is completely 100% backed by the wealthy and powerful and the real estate industry. However, I want you to also know that Shaikat had endorsed Bilal Mahmoud over Dean Preston, who is our champion, who was only recently defeated in that race. And he's supporting a lot of the billionaire agenda because he is practically a billionaire himself and is mostly living in Washington and has not been doing the grassroots work. So as a person who lives in the city and who wants us to be represented by somebody that we all know and trust and have seen a track record for, I think it's going to be an incredible thing historically for us to finally, after centuries of Chinese Americans working hard and building this city, oftentimes under the worst labor conditions, for us to be finally represented by a working class mom from Chinatown who has lived in tenant housing in Chinatown, for us to be represented by somebody who is actually working class and has all of our interests in mind, because this is her lived experience of living here and being an organizer, activist. And I have to say, I'm very, very inspired by this campaign. And she is so eloquent and so outspoken about what this direction of this country needs to be: pro-immigrant, pro-working families, pro-women. The Working Families Party has been endorsing her in walking districts, and all of her people knocking doors all this time have been volunteers. And I think we're the only campaign that has a vast majority volunteers, not paid people, because we don't have millions to give for this. She is a working class advocate. So anyway, thank you all for
it's quite a race, and I have to say, I lived in San Francisco for years, and when I was there, there was a real hard scrabble. There was a stable population of San Franciscans who were very proud of being a working class city, and of course, the definition of the city just was changed over the next 30 years. I left in 94 or so. And of course, it became defined by the money of Silicon Valley. And look, I do think that Shaikat will remain, whether he's in Congress or just an independent citizen, an advocate for the policy platforms that PDA endorses. I also think that he can be influential outside of Congress because of his profile and what he does in ways that probably will not be available to Connie Chan if she is not elected into an elected office where she's a public service. But I got to tell you, the working class people of San Francisco need a champion. They need a champion from working class communities. And I see in Connie Chan somebody who's very truly of that. And it'd be very hard for me to believe that Shaikat, given his background in any way, shape, or form, will be as attentive to the needs of the population as is supposed to be the case when you are a U.S. representative, as Connie Chan will be. So thank you so much, Hemming. And I hope the staff has been putting into the chat the link to sign up to volunteer and to and maybe share money and endorse Connie Chan. Yep. Great. Thank you so much. And just one final
Thank
word, then
you.
we go to Mike Olis as we introduce our next congressional candidate. But final thought, Hemming. Yeah.
Uh, I just wanted to let everyone know that Connie was very sad to not be able to make this call because, as you know, we're 2 days until the election day is upon us. So she wanted to give her best to PDA and thank us for endorsing her and supporting her. And she's very, very excited to be in the general and to be working alongside all of us on all the issues that we care about the most. So yeah, just that from Connie. So thank you all for being here and doing all the work you're doing.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Hemming Cho, our PDA San Francisco coordinator and team leader out there. Thank you so much. And next, I'm going to introduce the great Mike Olis, who is going to introduce our next candidate who's joining us. And I have to apologize. I put a T in his last name as I introduced him. It's Masuda, not Matsuda. So Mike Masuda is our next endorsed candidate, and he is running in California's 5th district. And he's got a great shot at getting into the runoff on Tuesday. And he is PDA endorsed because he is a fantastic PDA progressive. And Mike Olis, take it away.
Yeah, excuse me. Hey, Alan. Great to see you again. Hey, everybody. Mike Olis here, the chief of staff for Progressives, Democrats, Progressive Democrats of America. It's been a long weekend here because we've been phone banking all weekend and getting ready for this election. And we're excited to make our next endorsement and announcement. Mike Masuda, California 5th District. Mike, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. How's it going?
Hey, great, Mike. Hey, we met through a mutual friend who was a laid off, or not laid off, riffed, and one of the first people really attacked and riffed by Donald Trump and the federal government. Our friend Kimberly introduced us, and you decided to run for Congress. You're the front runner to get into this Republican district runoff in November. So could you just introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about your district and who you are and why you're running?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for inviting me to join the call today. Yeah, my name is Michael Masuda. I'm running for Congress in the California 5th District. It's my home district. My parents lived here. It's where I grew up. I moved to this area of California when I was 10. The town that I grew up in, it's the smallest incorporated town in the state of California. It is 200 people. It's got a mayor, it's got a city council, and it takes all of 15 seconds to drive through when there's traffic. So just to give you some context. My background, so Masuda is a Japanese last name on my dad's side. My grandparents were Japanese American, born in the United States, and also during World War II, they were forcibly relocated and interned in the Topaz internment camp in central Utah. So a lot of what we're seeing when it comes to immigration policy is an absolute repeat of the same failures and fear and division that has happened in the past. And it's something that I'm carrying with me in this campaign. This district is very large. It's the size of West Virginia, which is smaller than a lot of other districts in the country, but it's still quite large. It covers a huge swath of territory across the Sierra Nevada. It goes into the Central Valley of California, which is a big agricultural center. Really, they provide food for huge chunk of the country and the world. But it also incorporates places like Yosemite National Park and Death Valley and Kings Canyon National Park. So we've got 3 national parks there, a lot of national forest, a lot of natural resources, and this untouched natural environment. And so this is a huge issue in this district. There's a lot of water that is here, as I mentioned, a lot of natural or untouched land. So environmental issues are really popular. But it's also this part of the district that has been largely forgotten. So Sacramento politics, here in California, it's largely dictated. I don't mean to throw any shade at any other candidates, but it's largely dictated by the big cities in California. And this part of the state has really been struggling. Our Main Street economies are struggling. Schools, childcare, senior care, healthcare, all of these things that we talk about constantly, affordability issues, this whole area is getting absolutely slammed. And then when you add on rising costs of fuel prices, diesel, they're getting hit even harder than ever. And this is, like I said, a place that I grew up. So my background is actually electrical engineering. I never envisioned a career in politics. I wanted to use my math and science background to make the world a better place, have an impact in the way that I could. And I went to, so I got my degree in electrical engineering. My wife and I, we ended up moving to the Washington, D.C. area, where I worked in defense research for a number of years. And that's, where I started on my career, trying to have this impact where I could, and really helping a lot of young career folks, give them opportunities to use their engineering skills. But from there, I realized, I said, my engineering background, it's fantastic, but there are other things that I could be doing. And I ended up transitioning to go to work at the State Department through a fellowship with the American Association for the Advancement of Science. And it was there that I worked on science, technology, and foreign policy. And so while I was at the State Department working for the Science and Tech Advisor for the Secretary of State under Antony Blinken, we saw like the explosion of AI, and we are all over the country. We're talking about data centers now. And so, I was there talking about what is the implications of these types of technologies, quantum computers, neurotechnology, what should we be paying attention to, and how can we not just react to things, but how can we prepare and make sure we're talking about these issues in a way that respects human rights, that takes into account climate change in the environment, that looks at how people are going to, the impacts to labor and the workforce and the overall economy. So these are all things that I worked on in the federal government. I worked across federal agencies. So when the Trump administration came in, I saw my colleagues in these, especially these science agencies, working on issues like climate change, on the environment, on DEIA issues that were immediately axed. They were immediately riffed. The State Department, we were spared for a few months, but July 1st came around and the State Department also experienced their own round of rifts in 2025. I ended up quitting my job in early May to launch my campaign because I saw the writing on the wall. I knew what was going to happen, and it was not an administration that I could continue working for. So, I started looking around at what could I be doing. I looked back at the home district. My wife and I, we had many conversations over many weeks, and talking with local folks in the Democratic Party. And one of the things about rural districts across the country is that many of them don't get the resources that we need to be competitive. And so a lot of folks are viewed as sort of these sacrificial lambs. They jump in, they get that experience. Sometimes these districts just go totally, there's no competition. And what I told folks is, I'm going to get into this race and I will not be a sacrificial lamb. And what we have done over the past year and a few months now, or past year, is we've pulled together the Democrats, the indivisible groups, the progressive groups, people that have self-organized. We have hundreds of volunteers that are local, and we are running a grassroots campaign. Thousands of people have donated. We've got hundreds of people that are making those reoccurring donations to this campaign to fuel us forward. And I was just out there today, and I was right before I got on here, literally right before I got on, I was texting somebody that I was out canvassing with and helping them find new turf through our app so that they could continue working while I'm here talking to all of you. So I got here 15 minutes before the call, I've got two little kids. So my son was out there canvassing on his bike with me, and we were hitting houses. I got back home so I could jump on the call with all of you. So I'm out there doing the work and making sure that our volunteers know that I'm not going to be one that just sends them out there while I'm sitting in the air conditioned room, even though I'm doing that right now. I'm out there sweating, talking with people and hearing the stories of folks. As was pointed out earlier on, a lot of Republicans are not showing up, or their representatives rather are not showing up. That applies here too. Tom McClintock, he is our current representative. He has not held a town hall since 2017, but he'll show up if you throw a nice fundraiser for him. He'll definitely be there.
And
But a lot
Michael,
of folks,
I was looking up his environmental
yeah,
record because you have the most beautiful district probably in the country. The
yeah.
most sacred, one of the most sacred national parks, right? The
Mhm.
Sierra Nevadas. His environmental voting record, I thought it would be. I was like, it has to be pretty good for Republican, right? Because of what's in the district, and it was scary how bad his environmental voting
Yeah.
record is.
Cut baby cut is his
That's just,
approach, right? You want to solve wildfires, cut down more trees and you'll solve wildfires. And for those of you who don't have to deal with wildfires in this country, it's a huge issue here. It's driving up the cost of homeowners insurance. And so
I mean, I know
it's
people in the West who can't get
affordability issue.
they can't get insurance right now, right? I mean, it's
Yeah, a
and
lot of
really
folks
across the
cannot get
country, but
insurance.
it's an issue because of climate change. And if you talk about science, and I had
Mhm.
over at Purdue University here in Indiana, I heard one of the great engineering professors said to be an engineer is not just about math and science and solving problems, but it's about being a leader. It's about using your knowledge and going out in the world and making a difference. And so now exactly it sounds like the type of engineer that you are.
Yeah, I mean, it's about realistic solutions. It's not just about pie in the sky. It's what actually works. A lot of scientists will go out and they'll explore and discover and do that thing. That's great. And engineers, we take that and we turn it into something that can actually work. And that's a really important thing when we talk about politics too. You can't just have the pie in the sky stuff. You need things that actually work and that you can put into practice. Otherwise, it's just not, then you don't have anything, right? So,
And my
yeah.
last question, I think, for you is, we have this group of people that are coming together as federal workers. You're in a great New York Times article about your race, which was awesome. And
Yeah.
uh, you know, for let us like explain to us what's at risk because our friend Kimberly has been on our phone call. One of the first people riffed under Trump, but now it's tens of thousands of people. Our federal government is shattered. What's going on? Like, what's the purpose of this? Like, and what did you see? What was the writing on the wall that you said we got to get out in front of this and we got to, make a run here to do something different?
Yeah, I mean, you look at what is happening right now to our scientists across the federal government. I think something like over 10,000 people with advanced STEM degrees, PhDs, have left federal service. These are folks that are doing things like informing where we should be researching. They are informing environmental policy, like things that I was doing on technology and human rights and economic issues. These are people that help decision makers make more informed decisions. And those people have been fired or they have left in droves. And you do not get that talent back overnight. That talent was there. It took decades for this to happen, concerted effort. And now the Trump administration has just eviscerated this workforce. It's going to impact our policies. It's going to impact our smart decision making, and it's going to impact us over the long run in where we invest our money and the decisions that we make. It's a very, very terrible policy.
Mm.
Well, I'm gonna kick it back into Alan. Alan.
Yeah, well, Michael Masuda, it's great to meet you, and it's fantastic your race and also everything you're talking about. As Mike Olis just mentioned, yeah, we've been working with this group of candidates who are running, and they were released by Doge. Many of them scientists. What you're saying is absolutely true, and we really would love to see you in Congress because we would love to have a congressional champion. I mean, obviously, this wouldn't take place until the next presidential administration, hopefully, of course, a Democratic administration. But we need to rebuild this, and we need to build it because this was a lot of the infrastructure that provided the information that we need to have to really proceed in the 21st century, not just in the country, but around the world. The United States government was anchoring a lot of very, very serious information if people
Mhm.
don't know. And of course, the amazing and really unrivaled research capacity of American universities was of course underwritten and supported by the U.S. government and in a dialogical relationship. And I know that there's some variant of radical leftists who may one or two people maybe on this call right now who they hear money coming from the government and they object to it. We know, of course, a lot of the motivated science has been done by the Defense Department, but even then it had incredible human uses. And of course, a lot of the work done by the federal government is very pro-human. And we really need champions in Congress who understand that. So we'd love to see you there for all that we're doing with that group of people. Look, I want to put into the chat right now. I hope you can grab it. We are the champions of something called a Rural New Deal for the 21st century. It's co-authored with the Rural Urban Bridge Initiative. It is the proposal that is gaining traction among the Democratic caucus. We haven't had it introduced into Congress yet because there are so few progressive Democrats who are from red state rural districts, right? Sorry, rural districts. They've been all red. I mean, small town in rural America is practically a single party part of society dominated by the Republican Party. And the populations in those regions are not happy with the trajectory of the American economy, not happy with the trajectory of their lives. We feel that progressive policies, as outlined in the Rural New Deal, will have incredible traction there. And so please check that out, of course. We're looking to introduce it in the next Congress, and it is the Rural New Deal proposal that's gotten a good amount of traction in the media. Yeah.
Alan, I'll mention that I was reading that. I really like this because a lot of the stuff that you talk about that's shared in this is hitting like this. These are things that I talk about,
Right.
And it's hitting home with a lot of people, conservatives, moderates, liberals, progressives. It is hitting home with a lot of people. So I really like a lot of the content in here, and yeah.
Yeah. In fact, a lot of now pollsters are suggesting that in a lot of red state America, rural small town America, you actually have some progressive economic positions that are supported by the population, albeit some very conservative social issues very often. But thank you so much. This is brilliant, and I know with your endorsements, it's quite likely that we'll be able to have you back as we go towards November. But knock on wood, let's win this thing on Tuesday. Everybody support Michael's campaign for this Tuesday. And by the way, the next person up is Chris Bennett, who's running in CD3. And the reason, with the redistricting now, the part of CD3 that goes right up against the border of Nevada is now in your district, in CD5. So
yeah,
right.
It sure is. Some interesting games have happened here in California.
Yeah.
And then Michael wins. You're gonna take out one of those safe Republican districts, right? That were created for Republicans.
Yeah.
So this will be a
Hey, look,
amazing race to win.
Especially if Steyer gets in against Becerra, but even not if it's one of them against the Republican. But if it's the two Democrats, we really have a chance because it's going to be a landslide for Democrats probably in November because of the unpopularity and a great candidate like Michael. I think it's a competitive race. So thank you, Michael, so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And we're a little bit behind schedule. So Mike Fox, why don't we just have you for 1 minute and then we're going to go to Chris Bennett. And then I'm going to have to wrap by the bottom of the hour, and then you can take back over, Michael, with our PDA to-dos. But quickly, anything you want to point out that really needs support for our PDA to-dos right now? Getting more volunteers, more support for candidates, more support for PDA?
Yeah, if we're gonna tighten it up that much, I'll leave the thank yous for when we get into family time and just pile on the phones, gang. Hit the links in the chat. Let's make this thing happen. We've had great candidates speak today and a great representative for candidates, so everybody's been focused on them. Lovely. But we got to turn this call into productivity, gang. So back to you, Alan, and we'll take a good hard look at that productivity when we go into family time.
Yeah, and thank you, Mike Olis. And look, I'm really excited to introduce our next candidate to the PDA group here. And everybody, please stick with this. I know we've been on for about 70 minutes, and we're going to go another 20 minutes with Chris Bennett, who is running in California's 3rd district, which really, for all intents and purposes, is as close as you really get to being a new district. As I said, the sort of eastern wing of it has been carved out, which went all the way down the border of the state. And the Republican incumbent is now running in the 6th. So there's no incumbent in the CD3. However, there is one because a Democratic incumbent is moving over into this district. But as I say that, as you can imagine, there's not as much overlap as is usually the case with an incumbent. And it is now a solidly Democratic seat because what's been included, as opposed to the stuff out on the eastern part of California towards Nevada, rural largely, and then voting Republican, includes now the southeastern portion of the Sacramento metropolitan area. Very much a transformed district, California CD3, now considered strongly Democratic. It could end up being a runoff with that said incumbent, a very moderate, that is conservative Democrat named Ami Bera. Hasn't really been anyone that progressives have gone to do a lot of work with in Congress, and has not been a force supporting our progressive agenda in Congress. Now running in the third. And according to journalism in the region, his primary Democratic opponent is Chris Bennett, who is joining us now. And it's one of these districts where it could be two Democrats in a runoff. It could be Ami Bera or Chris Bennett versus a Republican. And actually, right off the bat, Chris, what are there many Republicans running in the district, or is there just one or so?
There are three.
Right.
One, it's actually interesting. So the district, it looks like a elephant now, and that's not a joke. But the 60% of the population is in just the Sacramento County area, and then the other is in the former third district. And so we got one from Lake Tahoe, one who's a Nevada County supervisor, and then one who is a Republican from the old sixth district. So we're hoping that they split their vote pretty evenly because that'll make our chances a lot better.
They could do that very likely. And so it's one of these things where, again, there's not a unified Republican candidate. So if they're a third of the vote, there's a real shot that two Democrats get into the runoff. Chris Bennett, so tell us about yourself and why you were running for Congress.
Sure. I'm Chris Bennett. I'm running for Congress in California's third district. And I am a people first, corporate free progressive, but I did not start out that way. I came from a long line of military veterans. I have 9 younger siblings and 1 older stepsister. I don't like to count because I like to be the oldest. And when I was getting ready for school in 6th grade, after growing up in a Fox News Rush Limbaugh household, my uncle called from Puerto Rico and told me to turn on the news. And when I watched the second plane hit the World Trade Center, I decided instead of being an architect, I would follow my parents' footsteps. So I graduated from the United States Military Academy at West Point in 2013 with a degree in computer science, where I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Afterwards, I was stationed overseas from 2014 to 2016, during which time I like to say that I got radicalized by Bernie Sanders when he ran for president the first time. Bernie, he made me question things like, why did 9/11 happen? Why did we go to war in Iraq and Afghanistan? Why do we have the most expensive healthcare system in the world with the worst health outcomes of any developed country? And why is it that we have people that are rich enough to own private islands while students and full-time workers are homeless? Even though I was raised conservative, I was also taught to love my neighbor and to think critically. And I preferred Bernie's vision of the future, so I've been a progressive ever since. After my time in Korea, I became one of the Army's first cyber warfare officers, and I got promoted to the rank of captain, and they said, Captain Bennett, you're going to be a general someday. You just got to wait 20 or 30 years to do it. And I was like, I would rather do something good now. So I got out, worked in healthcare for about 5 years, got my Master of Business Administration from UC Berkeley. Go figure, right? And after the second Trump election, I was sitting in my office listening to this content creator that some of you may be familiar with called Innuendo Studios, who was talking about crossing the Rubicon and how fascism is not something that happens all at once. It's more like a death of 1,000 cuts. So if you don't take stock of exactly where you are when it starts, you won't even know what you become desensitized to before it's far too late. So we had everyone pull out a piece of paper and write down, right now, in this moment, what is your line? That when that line gets crossed, you'll actually do something about it. And for me, I wrote down people getting black bagged or kidnapped off the street. And that started happening last April, especially to immigrant students for protesting Israel's genocide in Gaza. I'm a student of history, and I know that authoritarian regimes always start with a voiceless, powerless minority. And if there's not enough pushback from the broader community, then it expands and expands and expands. We've heard the story. First, they came for the socialists, and then there was no one left to come to stand for me, right? So I quit my job to run for Congress because it's the decisive point of our democracy, with the power of the purse, the power to impeach, and the power to fix our broken system and make it work for all of us. Our campaign is different from a lot of the other ones. It's not just, all right, every 2 years we'll put some Facebook and TV ads out and then we'll disappear off the DC and you never hear from us again. We're actually trying to rebuild true, excuse me, grassroots people power in the region, because that is what it's going to take for us to actually defeat this authoritarian fascist oligarchy we find ourselves in. So our platform is the most comprehensive of any in the entire region, not just in our district, because we've actually spoken directly to the constituents to understand what are the problems that you are facing. You are the expert of your experience. How can we make your life better? We have hundreds of volunteers across the district. We've raised the third most money as of a couple of weeks ago of all the candidates in the race, even though, if you look at what the media says, it's like we don't exist in a lot of ways. Although I'm glad that we're finally starting to get some reporting that's talking about us. But for us, this is not about this election. This is about the next couple decades. We are going to have to work very hard to undo all of the harms that have been done. And we are witnessing the collapse of the American empire in real time. But if progressives do not have power when that collapse finally goes through, we will have far less of a say on what comes afterwards. So it's important for us to get into office now to address people's immediate material concerns, but also to fight to fix this broken system that gave us what we are looking at right now. So that's my broad pitch, but I'm happy to be here.
Well,
Thanks so much for having me.
yeah,
And
no,
for your endorsement.
no, yeah, for sure. And there's so many things there. First of all, you should know if you don't know already, welcome home in the sense that Progressive Democrats of America, we are the sole national organization that drafted Bernie Sanders to run for president in 2013. We launched the
Thank you for
Run
your
Bernie Run.
service.
Yeah,
I have Our Revolution over here somewhere.
Well, our revolution was the outgrowth of Sanders' campaign, and there are a number of reasons. We're partners with them officially, but there's a number of reasons why it just all didn't fold into PDA. In part, it's because our founding executive director, died. That was a person that Bernie had a relationship, and also probably because we have Democrats in our title, because Bernie is not, a Democrat, but that works in Vermont. It doesn't really work elsewhere. It's working in Nebraska right now for Dan Osborne because the progressives control the Democratic Party, so they stand down and don't run the campaign. That's just not going to happen in most states. So, Bernie was out doing the Fight Oligarchy tour, encouraging people to run and it's independent. Now that would work in California ostensibly, but it doesn't because people have in their mind where the Democratic Party is not a toxic brand like it is in Nebraska, which is a tragic thing, but it's I think true and smart what Osborne's doing out there, but only available because Jane Cleave is the head of the Democratic Party and she's a Bernie progressive, and therefore she'll have the party stand down. So we're locked inside this two-party system. But having gotten into the position that I'm in, Chris, as the head of PDA, a job I was asked to apply for. And by the way, folks, I initially said no. I was an applicant to be the executive director of the Pacifica Radio Network at the time and was still a live candidate. But I sort of knew I wasn't going to win that. I knew the makeup of that board. And 8 days later, after I was asked, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez beat Joe Crowley, and I realized the political battle was inside the Democratic Party. I mean, she ran as a Democrat. All the squad members are Democrats. And, what people lose sight of when they criticize our electoral system first past the post, there's a lot to criticize about it. And the biggest problem, of course, is right now money in politics. And there have been very more suffocating and constrictive ways that the two parties have operated, and less so, more so. But people should think about this when they condemn the system. In all those multi-party democracies that exist, whether you have multi-parties in other countries, liberal democracies, almost none of them have primaries. Those are determined usually at the very local level from the members of the party, or even more. People like the idea of proportional representation. Those slates are usually determined in the capital by the heads of the party as to who sits in those things. In the United States, pretty much any citizen can run in either of the two major parties. And so we have this double-winged primary system, 2 election tiers. That's actually a very, very open democratic system, albeit completely perverted by money. And you, for instance, Chris Bennett, can stand up and understand that it might take you 20 years to be a general, but you could become a member of Congress in just a few months. My understanding is that, there's a shot for you in this race. And let's say this, I really would love if whatever happens in your primary in a few weeks that we reconnect, because I would love to work with you and get into the 3rd district and wherever you're organizing a relationship with PDA, because we're very strong inside the Democratic Party. We're probably the strongest grassroots mass membership progressive organization operating inside party structures. And we need progressives to strengthen our hands, get money out of politics, win control of the party, have a people's party in this country, and change America along the lines of what you're envisioning. I love your also analysis of U.S. foreign policy and where we're at, because boy, are we in trouble there too. And so how's the campaign resonating? And tell us about your army of volunteers out across the 3rd district and where they come from and how it's looking to get into the runoff. Yeah.
Yeah, so our campaign has been coming across very positively for the majority of people that we meet because we're actually talking to people. One of the problems with the Democratic and Republican Party is in a lot of ways, we almost crowdsource what our policy platform positions are, but we do it through extremely conservative consultants and then wonder why we keep losing elections, right? So for us, we're actually just talking to people. We've spoken to like at least 10,000 people in the last few months. And a lot of people are saying similar variants of the same thing. I can't afford to make rent. I'm having to skip meals to make sure my kids get fed. I can't afford to even visit my children because the gas is too expensive to put into my car. These are the kinds of problems a lot of people are facing. And regardless of who you voted for in the presidency, you are being affected by increasing prices, the lack of jobs, and the fact that we just cannot seem to. Sorry, my cat is going crazy.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, sorry. Anyway,
Um,
so our platform are a lot of things that most of us feel like we should already have. Single payer universal health insurance with Medicare for all, covering vision, hearing, dental, gender affirming, and reproductive care. A federal jobs guarantee in things like infrastructure, climate and wildfire readiness, health and social services, public housing and public investment for low and middle income housing. Because a lot of people don't know this, but the Faircloth Amendment means that we have had a limit on new public housing being built by Congress since 1999. And that's one of the drivers of the unaffordability of housing. And even though our district is uh, it's very diverse, we have urban, suburban, and rural areas in it, the basic needs that people have are pretty much the same across the board. We need food in our belly, we need a roof over our head, we need access to healthcare, and we need to feel safe in our communities and know that our kids are doing okay. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is also bring about making polluters pay. That's the only way that we'll ever actually fight climate change until we put those externalities that they've dumped onto rural areas in the United States and the global South. They will continue to pollute and basically invest in these propaganda campaigns to undermine trust and belief in science. And so, because we are able to actually unify all these different things that are causing our system to fail and fall and crumble underneath us, we're able to get a lot more people together under that big tent that the Democratic Party used to talk about a lot. We kind of gave up on that tent ever since Bill Clinton made us a second party of business. And that's one of the reasons why the working class, after we left them behind, has now left us behind. Donald Trump he didn't say he would do anything to help people, but he said, here's who's to blame and I will punish them for you. And if someone is not going to help you, then if someone will at least punish the people who are making your life worse, then that's better than nothing. And so we need to go back towards actually recultivating rural support and support from working class Americans. And I think some of that starts with the labor union. So we've gotten a lot of labor union endorsements from California, representing more than 825,000 California workers. So that's SEIU California, the California Faculty Association, Unite Here Local 49, UpD CWA. There's a couple of other ones that could keep going on. It's on our endorsements page, CWA
yeah.
as well. But one thing that we've been doing is we just go out and be where the people are. We've been at every single No Kings protest, and a lot of people are saying, we're saying things like, oh, what's the point of going? It's just going to be like a parade. But every time you get a ton of people into a place all at once, that's an opportunity to organize. It's an opportunity to get people's contact information, to get them plugged into something that they care about. And that's one of the things that we've been doing. We have some real diehard volunteers who are literally going out, they're making signs and banners, they're sticking them up over overpasses, they are replacing all the banners that we have that get destroyed and vandalized because unlike most of the yard signs that you'll see, that's just like a name and a logo, ours has actual policy on it. It says a new generation fighting for people, not billionaires. Basic needs and Medicare for all, reproductive and LGBTQ plus rights, no wars, no genocide, no ICE. That's what it says on our yard signs. And so our yard signs, they tend to go missing or get vandalized, but in our mind, that's actually a good sign. It means that people realize that it's dangerous, unlike a lot of the other people in these races that you're seeing where it's just like their name and like a color logo. But for us, we've gotten a lot of people to come to the campaign just because they read the sign, they looked at the website, and they're like, I love what you are trying to accomplish. I want to be part of it. How can I help? So for us, we've built a very grassroots and strong campaign organizing capacity, but we're not just doing this for the short run. We're doing it for the long run as well. My campaign manager slash campaign organizer, because they're an anarchist who swore off electoral politics before I convinced them to run my campaign, they like to say that
I love
talking to
it.
five people a day helps to keep
Uh,
fascism away. And I
oh,
think that's something
I'd love to
we
meet
all
that
need to
guy.
embrace and
Yeah.
spread. So
Uh,
it's been really amazing. Even as we speak, there's people knocking on doors on our behalf. There's people tabling at farmers markets. And something that I learned, which I did not really fully understand before I started this, was there's a lot of progressives in rural areas too. Some of our
Mhm.
strongest support is coming from a place called Nevada County, which
Mm,
includes Nevada City, Grass Valley, Truckee,
mm.
a lot of the Lake Tahoe region. And a lot of people up there, they have not had any kind of progressive representation for a very long time, but the Democratic Party up there has been basically taken over by a lot of progressives. So there are a lot of opportunities for us to actually take back the Democratic Party away from the corporate, moderate, centrist establishment types who would rather see Andrew Cuomo win over Zoran Mamdani. And I think it's important for us to do something about that. And the way we
Right.
do it is one, we fight for things that are popular. Two, we make things popular that should be popular. And three, we actually win elections. That is like the mandate for every single representative. So I'm excited. I obviously am also excited for like a week off after Tuesday because we're extremely
Well, you got
exhausted.
to go on fumes until then. But yeah, no, there seems to be a Democrat running, but very much from is that because you have the mayor of Grass Valley endorsing you, and also I noticed someone else from Nevada County.
Yeah, former mayor
Right,
of Nevada City, mayor of
right,
Grass Valley, both women
right.
who are pretty progressive. We've also been endorsed by city council member from Folsom, city council member from Rancho Cordova, all the ones who have been kind of like insurgents on the outside, like environmental activists fighting for millennials and Gen Z, just fighting to basically not use our resources to harm our own people, trying to limit the ability of ICE agents to cooperate with local law enforcement. Those are the kinds of things that a lot of people in these rural areas are also trying to do. And so it's important for us to realize that this urban rural divide, it does not serve us. It serves the people that are continuously dividing us. The people at the top, whenever they destroy the economy, they always find a way to say, oh, it's someone else, it's your neighbor who's to blame. But we always have more in common than what divides us. And I think we need to build solidarity just between the working class, but also between suburban, and rural areas, and also people who oftentimes feel like we don't have a lot in common. So
I love on your website that you have. I love that you have our logo up, which I just sent you earlier today, which is great. But also, I love that you have the West Point Code of Honor up there still, which I think I when we meet again next in person, because I met you up at the California convention, Democratic Party convention. When we meet next, I'd love to hear about your experiences at West Point.
yeah, it's
Um,
a great place to be from. It's not necessarily a great place to be at,
Oh,
but
it's funny. Again, you can't really visit if you're just a layperson, but I ended up there's some PDA international people. Sonia Klein, who's been one of our organizers with Democrats Abroad for decades. Her partner, who was Dennis Kucinich's campaign chair in 2004 when he was a peace candidate, he was a West Point grad, and so I got as close as you could get to going in with him one day, and I was just very fascinated by the whole culture of the place. But and of course, it's so spectacular on the Hudson there. But yeah, there's a candidate Heidi Hall is running, and she's definitely a more less conservative Democrat than Ami Bera, but doesn't really seem to foreground working class issues at all. Very environmentally focused. So if people are checking out the district and wondering about that candidate, who has raised a sort of slightly amount of money that would suggest that they're a competitive candidate. I don't see her as advocating for working class people the way that you clearly have as well. And obviously, the environmental issues are huge and up from that part of this country. So I don't know how much traction she'll have in Sacramento. Just before you go, a little bit about Ami Bera. He's an incumbent, and he has what part of the Sacramento metro in his current district, but there's only about 50% overlap, and very conservative Democrat. And if you are in a runoff against him, you must cherish that race.
yeah, I mean, I can tell you about the other major Democratic competitors that we have. So Ami Bera has been in office for more than a decade and has zero legislative accomplishments to his name,
Yeah.
besides naming buildings and then basically signing his name at the bottom of group projects. He got into office off of corruption in the first place. His father went to prison for over a year for funneling almost $300,000 into Ami's first two campaigns, which Bera claimed no knowledge of. But he also votes wrong. So he voted for Charlie Kirk Day. He censured Al Green for defending Medicaid. He continues to send our money and weapons to Israel to do war crimes. He is against universal health insurance because he takes big pharma and private health insurance company money. And he also takes money from election deniers. So I just shared a page there that has a list of some of the groups that he takes money from. But to name a few, obviously there's APAC and J Street, but there's Home Depot, Fox News, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Eli Lilly and Co., United Health Insurance, Fox News, Home Depot. Did I mention those already? Maybe I did. So
Mm.
it kind of explains why it feels like he's not really interested in doing things that'll actually improve the lives of people here. I live in an area that he has represented for several years, and I've had multiple drive-by shootings behind my place, and the people here are struggling, and nothing has changed under his leadership or lack thereof. So one thing I tell people is I could get into office and do literally nothing except for vote the right way, and I would still be a better representative than Ami Bera. But we also are trying to actually change things and make them better for everyday Americans. And we want to make it so we're using our resources to help us instead of using it to harm people, whether it's here or abroad. Now, Heidi Hall, she's been a county supervisor for 9 years. And until I entered the race in November, she was an extremely conservative Democrat. Even now on her website, she references immigrants as illegal felons on the same page where she says to abolish ICE. And she was using APAC J Street talking points until January. So for us, we're up against career politicians, people who will say anything to try and get elected. And then when they get into office, you can't trust them to actually do anything because they have no values of their own that they're actually trying to prop up. Now, for us, that the proof is kind of in the pudding, right? In that link that I just shared with you at the California Democratic Party's pre-endorsement convention, our campaign got second place. We were just 6 votes behind Ami Bera, who's been in office for more than a decade, and we won Nevada County outright against their 3-term county supervisor. And that was because we've actually been going around talking to people and showing up and understanding like the actual grassroots component of the Democratic Party is sick and tired of how it feels like it's always the conservatives who rise into these positions of power, and then they're the ones blocking all the progressive change. Like one of the things that our campaign helped do early on, there was a proposed rule at the California Democratic Party to ban the discussion of foreign policy issues at local Democratic clubs. And obviously, you can guess who proposed that type of rule. And we were able to popularize and get the word out on it. I think we had like 50,000 views or something on our Instagram story that we made on it. And that allowed us to basically stop them from doing it. And that was in partnership with the Wellstone Progressive Democrats, Our Revolution, affiliate of Sacramento County, who we've also been endorsed by. So for us, we think that the Democratic Party is honestly, it's the closest thing that we have to a party that's trying to do something to actually make things better, but it will never change unless we can take the party back over from the corporate centrist moderate establishment who are basically Republicans in everything but name.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I obviously we are involved with PDA with Democratic parties across the country. California is one of the worst of them. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, there are people here who would be a Republican in any other state or a Democrat because we have a uniparty state.
There we go.
That's one of the problems. And so, I think if you take corporate money, if you take APAC money, if you take money from any billionaires to vote in their interests, I think you should just be a Republican. I don't think you should be allowed to be a Democrat.
It's very telling that we, of course, have no squad members. So we have Latifah Simon, of course, from Barbara Lee and Ron Dellum's district, and Rokana are sort of the closest. And after that, it might be like Maxine Waters, because we have this really very now efficient and it shuts people out, the Democratic machine. And I have a final question for you. Now, Jim Langford from PDA staff had a question, and I'd love to have Jim's question because Jim is doing such an unbelievably brilliant job down in Florida organizing progressives. And that's a very different environment. In Florida, there's been a Democratic Party void. And under Jim's leadership and Mike Fox's leadership and other PDA members, we're really creating the infrastructure for a powerful Democrat progressive force inside the party. And I don't think we're going to see the barriers to progressive candidates like we've seen elsewhere. Jim Langford, go ahead.
I just wanted to basically interrupt for just a moment and say how incredibly impressed I am. And if you ever decide to leave California, we have about several million people who would welcome you right here in Central Florida. And I'm not kidding. It has been amazing to hear what you had to say. I come from a military family, so I understand your background and I understand the conservative leanings. But I also come from a rural area. My family was in rural North Florida, and everything you said about the rural community is true. So I appreciate everything you're doing, and like I said, if you ever decide to move, we'll welcome you with open arms in Florida. So thank you.
Appreciate that, and thank you for your service.
And by the staff members, we have a bit of a backlog in people in the waiting room right now, just to point that out to folks. Sorry. But thank you, Jim, as always. And hey, Hemming, do you have anything to add? Just as a PDA California person, we've had two other California candidates, obviously, on this call besides Connie
I
Chan.
actually, I would like to say I'm very inspired by your candidacy, and I just spent 5 days in your area going to all the towns that you mentioned, except we missed Grass Valley. And I'm so happy to hear that people are supporting progressive politics in those areas. It seems like a lot of those towns have either rednecks or hippies, and a lot of them have both, like a lot a lot of vegetarian restaurants and also lots of flags. But yeah, I'm so excited to hear about your candidacy because those areas, I do think that very likely people are running up against all of the issues with energy costs, housing insurance, feeding their kids, and the loss of the federal funding and for so many programs is hitting people in rural areas so much harder now. And so I am starting to see that people seem to be willing to come together on the very local issues that all of us can agree upon, you know. So yes, I whatever we can do to help boost you, I hope we will because your part of California is beautiful and should stay clean and yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I've been an ethical vegan for about 4 years, so it's really nice being able to find food up there, you know. It's important to fight climate change. You know, you got to make polluters pay, but there's also individual decisions we can make that can make a difference. But you're absolutely right. One of the biggest things a lot of people are struggling with is fire insurance. Um, a lot of home insurance companies like State Farm, they realize it's too expensive to insure people's homes anymore, and so they leave the state. But there is a plan here in California called the FAIR Plan, but a lot of people who are on fixed income, you know, retirees, they're now having to pay like ten to $15,000 a year for basically just fire insurance, and it's pushing people out of our homes. There's also just a real this big thing that I thought was interesting was rural areas are a lot more expensive than I thought they were. You know, it's more
Mm.
expensive to live in these rural areas than it is to live in a city, and that's one of the things that kind of changed from what I saw. But the people there, they're throwing down very hard, and they actually tend to be very good at organizing in a way that a lot of
Mm.
like suburban and urban people don't realize. Because it doesn't matter what your political beliefs are. If a wildfire is coming towards your home, you're going to work to help your neighbors, you know, take care of each other's pets, take care of each other's livestock, for example, and help rebuild each other's homes because you have to. You don't have another option. So I think we could also take a couple pages out of these rural areas playbooks to learn how we can be more effective at organizing when it comes to places with higher density as well. But I'm glad that you're able to meet up with some people there and check those areas out. It's truly beautiful. If it wasn't so expensive, I wouldn't mind living up there. That's what I would say.
Nevada City was absolutely my favorite, but I have to say all of those areas are incredible and people were very friendly and so open. Um, the fuel prices in rural areas are higher than they are in San Francisco. I
It's over
that is something
$7.
and also food costs because food has to travel so much further when there isn't farmland just adjacent to you. And so, yes, all of those things really, I can see how that increased. And I want to apologize as somebody who lives in San Francisco for all of the billionaires who've now moved to Lake Tahoe because it was a bit crazy how many billionaire houses there were right by the lake. And maybe because we're exporting them just across the border to Nevada,
Yeah.
fewer of them will be clogging up our political shores here. But I
Yeah,
don't think
Tahoe
they're
is a
going to be
big
great
problem.
for.
Yeah, they have a billionaires
Yeah,
row there, and now they're so if y'all are familiar with Enron, after the Enron fiasco happened, they got rebranded into Nevada Energy. It's now a subsidiary of Berkshire Hathaway, and because they want to make more money by selling energy and electricity to casinos and AI data centers, they're actually cutting off the California side, and all of the California Lake Tahoe side is in our district, District 3. So if you've seen the reporting on
mm,
that, you know, we tried to get the word out about
yeah,
that way back in March. And now it's sort of become like a national news story, but a lot of people are being squeezed out of their homes in the Tahoe region. And, a lot of people, there's a lot of wealthy people who are retired there. And one of the things that we say is
Yeah.
vote for Chris Bennett if you want to keep being able to ski, because we got to defeat climate change. So that's one of the ways. But I think that billionaires should not exist. We need to tax them out of existence. And we need to make sure that every single American has their basic needs before a single person can accumulate $1 billion.
I was so pleased to meet a few of the locals in one of the towns, Virginia City, population 700. It survives on tourism, but one woman was a native Alaskan who just had, the heartbreaking stories of not having near at hand medical care that was very, very good for autoimmune diseases. And another gentleman that I met is a Palestinian, 5 children. He's about to go back to home to Palestine, and he's lived there for 35 years in Virginia City. They're great people in your district, is what I wanted to say, and much more diverse than I would have imagined. Um, and I saw a lot of and met a lot of Asian and Latino people in your districts. So yeah, people might have a completely wrong idea of Northern California, but there are a lot of good folks doing good work and just trying to feed their families. So I really hope you win this, and we will do what we can as PDA.
Thank you. Yeah, I was actually up in Truckee and South Lake Tahoe yesterday knocking on doors. And a lot of these rural areas, just the mere fact that you are willing to knock on their door, like go all the way out there, is enough to win their vote. And then when you're also presenting policy platform positions that will actually make their lives better, it's like a double whammy. And then they're actually going around talking to their friends and being like, hey, this congressional candidate showed up at my place like 2 hours or 3 hours from where they live, right? Like that's something that we can completely take advantage of and use to actually make people's lives better. So I think we just got to break down that urban, suburban, rural divide. And yeah, you're right. There's some of the most beautiful people that I've ever met. I've definitely fallen in love with them over and over and over again. And it fills me with hope seeing all the people that are trying to do something no matter where they live.
Um, hey, so Hemming, thank you so much, Hemming. And I just was checking out all of our California endorsed candidates on the website, and I do have a few candidates I do want to highlight as we go out. But maybe Chris, final thoughts, and thank you so much, Hemming, and maybe final thoughts from Hemming on the day in California elections, or any thoughts there, and then to Chris for final thoughts, and then maybe both of you stay on as I'll review all of our California endorsed candidates. So we're three that we've endorsed who are non-incumbents who we were unable to ever have on a town hall, so I do want to highlight them. So please go ahead, Hemming, and then to Chris.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alan. This has been a really great call, and it's always so inspiring to see how many great progressive candidates there are. Just a last push for Connie Chan, because as you all probably know, I did a lot of Bernie Sanders organizing. I did a lot of Jane Kim organizing when she was running for mayor. I believe that Connie would be one of the highest ranking Asian Americans, certainly around the country, but even in California. And to see a great progressive immigrant Asian American in Congress right now opposing the all of the anti-immigrant backlash it would do me proud, and it would make my heart very, very happy. And I think because we have so many communities, the labor community, so many Asian American, Latino, African American communities supporting and backing Connie, I think that we're going to see a veritable rainbow coalition of labor and local activism knocking on doors for her in the general. I think that the only person who can beat Scott Wiener with his millions of dollars of funding from real estate developers is Connie. So I'm thanking you all in advance for doing any virtual phone banking and supporting with your dollars, because this is going to be one of the most impactful races in this season, because San Francisco is a really important district to be represented in Congress. Our voice speaks louder because we're just very well known nationally and internationally, and Connie is going to represent all of our interests beautifully. So thank you all.
Yeah, by the way, one other talking point that we didn't mention, I didn't mention, I would think that Connie, if she gets into the runoff against Wiener, would have a better shot against Weiner than Schicott would, because if you just think about there's Weiner's been an established political name there, and there's probably some proportion of Connie's vote that will go towards the representatives that they have in the state Senate. They would have voted for Weiner before, whereas I think Schicott is more of a a themed race that doesn't have any kind of built-in base from the city population and working class population. So I think it's a heavier lift, and it would be less of a lift for Connie to win over Alina, especially with the big name endorsements that she's gotten recently. So yeah, I think that's another pragmatic reason to support the race too. Hey, thank you so much, Hemming. And over to
Thank you.
Chris, and if you can both stay on as I go over the California races, just in case you have anything else you want to chime in about any other races. But Chris, final thoughts? And yeah, when I met you, among other things, Chris happens to share the same name and same spelling as my best friend from high school. So I very much perked up and shared with my friend in Austin, Texas, that Chris Bennett is running for Congress, and he's a great candidate. So, I always, I had the situation I had with my family and everything, and I backed away from some of the connections I had, and it became hard for me to keep up with everything. But I always wanted to bring Chris onto our town hall. I'm glad we've had this opportunity and to introduce him on the national platform of PDA. So, Chris, final thoughts for the day.
Yeah, well, first, thank you so much for having me. It was really nice meeting you in San Francisco before. Our campaign, it's not about me. It's about the future we want to see, the platform we want to accomplish. And I've been telling people, judge your candidate by our platform. And if there's something that you feel like is not great on there, let us know, because we're always trying to improve it. I put some links into the chat there. The issues has our platform on it. We got our endorsements. If you want to volunteer, we have both phone banking and canvassing. Obviously, we have like a day and a half left, but every little bit helps. And fundamentally, we're in this for the long haul. This is not just about, oh, we don't win, we give up. This is about, regardless of winning or losing, and we are fully planning on winning, we are going to be doing the exact same work to organize our community and to actually build real grassroots regional people power so that we can defeat authoritarian fascism. And we're actually using a model that has already been tried and tested before from a former county supervisor up in Calaveras County named Steve Walensky. He was also a big labor union organizer with SEIU. He worked with a lot of indigenous tribes as well. And one of the things that he was able to build when he ran before and won his 3 elections in a row was an infrastructure that still exists to this day, more than 20 years later. So that's the kind of power that we are working to build. And I think that we truly need to basically have a new generation of leaders in Congress, people who understand that the system does not work and that until we are able to break away from it and play by a different set of rules, we're going to continue suffering under what is being done to benefit those who already have all the wealth and power in the world. So thanks so much for having us here. Hope to see you all again very soon. And for us, this is a generational fight, but it's one that's worth fighting. And our goal is to make sure that young people can feel hope for the future again, and that our elders can rest instead of having to work until we die or wake up early on a Sunday morning to protest fascism. So thanks for having me once again. And please donate if you can. Every little bit helps.
Thank you. And then the link should be in the chat too. You can find them for the split donation to Chris's campaign and PDA. I encourage everybody to get to volunteer, get on the phone for Chris. It's a very difficult race to assess because look, there's been not that much press coverage on the race in the third. The redistricting happened quite late, obviously, for how this then got reset. And I mean, there were no debates, right, between candidates or anything like that. So
we've had some candidate forums, and
right.
I think probably the best one was the one we did in Nevada County, actually, which I could find a link for it. Yeah.
And how did that go? Was it the Democratic people who were up there doing it, or was it all the
it was League of
Republicans?
Women Voters, actually.
So it included the Republicans?
Yes, it did include the Republicans. We also had one with Latinos Unidos, which was very interesting because one of the Republican candidates was literally talking about illegals in completely not knowing their audience at all. But it was also very illuminating in a lot of ways, obviously. So
In your sense of connection with the audience, your connection, how did that go over?
I think, yeah, I think that we had the best performance. We also, what makes it easier is that I actually believe the things that I'm saying. I'm not just spouting off someone else's talking points. But, it's hard to tell, obviously, but we think we're doing well because the fact that no polling has come out is probably a signal that we are doing well. If the polling showed that the other candidates were winning, they would release it. But since they're not releasing that, it's sort of like an informal poll for us. But
Yeah, and
people,
I really do believe that across the country. By the way, I don't know if you saw I think you were around by the time I shared the Rural New Deal program with with candidate
yeah,
Masuda,
yeah,
and
I wrote it down too.
yeah, no, please check that out, and also you mentioned a federal job guarantee. That's part of our 21st Century Economic Bill of Rights proposal that we work on with a whole bunch of Bernie Sanders and Rokon and people like that. But PDA and myself we were authors of it and big champions of it. Hey, it'll be great to work with you in Congress. And Chris Bennett, thank you for standing up and doing what you're doing. Thank you. And
Thank
uh,
you.
and Chris, of course, is our endorsed candidate in California's third district, the official endorsed candidates for PDA in California. Besides incumbents Latifah Simon and I believe we're going to actually add Maxine Waters to this list and Ro Khanna. Those are our two incumbents. Again, this sort of conspicuous dearth of and Judy Chu. So three members that we've endorsed. We had a few others, but some of our favorite actually people to work with in Congress we did de-endorse over Israel and Palestine. But we have a few candidates that we haven't had on a town hall. Now we haven't for a long time had Audrey Denny on. Of course, I thought it was very important to introduce Michael Masuda and talk about Connie Chan's race and of course Chris Bennett on our call today. But Audrey Denny was somebody we've had on and we endorsed previously, and we recognize there's a pathway for her to get into the runoff that's very real. We all know that the district was in many respects gerrymandered to the liking of the Senate Pro Tem Mike McGuire, and but we really feel Audrey has a chance. McGuire's not the most conservative of Democrats, but he's not the most progressive either, and there's a huge gap between himself and Audrey, and we really love to see Audrey in as again small town and rural champion up in California one. In California number two, a district that is now Jared Huffman's district, Rose Penelope Yee, who we endorsed in California one last cycle when Audrey didn't run, she's been redistricted into California two. So we have endorsed her. And when we endorse a candidate like Rose Penelope Yee against Jared Huffman, who's a progressive but not too progressive Democrat, we really champion the way in which they can lean into the race and try to pressure Huffman to be a better representative. But Rose Penelope Yee, we were unable to have time to feature her on a call. We meant to, apologies to Rose on that. But she has a chance of getting into the runoff again. Huffman will be heavily favored, but there's a chance there. Third district, of course, is Chris Bennett, who we featured today. Now, going through the numbers, then, just to do it that way, Michael Masuda, who we had on today's call again in California's fifth. Then a race that I think is very important to lean into because the polls suggest that Mai Vang is going to get into a runoff with the long-standing Congresswoman in California 7th, whose name I'm now spacing on. And the polls suggest that is the case. However, the Republican is not that far behind the top Republican from Mai Vang. So very important we've had Mai on on this town hall, fantastic candidate. And we really think she can win this seat versus the sitting incumbent who's been there forever and whose constituent service performance now is so subpar as to be almost absurd. And of course, May is a true progressive. The person who's been in the 7th forever has not been a progressive champion. So Mai Vang in the 14th. Then over to the 14th, which was Swallow's district. So of course, the last district to become an open race. We are endorsing a candidate who we were unfortunately unable to bring on to our town hall, and that is Dr. Aisha Wahab, is endorsed by PDA, and encouraging people in the 14th who might be on the call or know people in the 14th, let them know please to vote for Aisha Wahab, who has a real chance in that race to replace the disgraced moderate conservative Democrat Eric Swalwell, who has resigned from his position. Then, of course, Roe, of course, is in the 17th, but Roe is an incumbent. Now, I do want to say this about Ro Khanna's race. If you don't know, Roe is likely to be challenged by a big money backed candidate who comes right out of Andreessen Horowitz, and that last name of Aharwal, I think is the name. And he, of course, is a Silicon Valley guy who's got a gajillion, well, good amount of fortune himself. But Andreessen Horowitz is a very conservative wing of the increasingly conservative Silicon Valley oligarch set led by Mark Andreessen, always been a Republican stalwart along with Peter Thiel. And he is, they are going to raise a ton of money. They hope to get their candidate who just got in to the race very late, but in time, and they haven't raised much of a campaign for him, but they are thinking he will get into the runoff. There's a possibility a Republican will do better. Of course, I'm not encouraging anyone to do anything but vote for Roe, but hopefully this guy will not get in. If he does get in, they are announced that they're going to put 20, 30, $40 million, believe it or not, in trying to defeat Ro Khanna in that district. I don't think they can do it. Let them waste their money, but we're going to have to put bandwidth into it to defend Roe against that race. So that's one worth looking out for. And of course, vote for Roe on Tuesday if you're in the 17th district. Then going down the state, it gets a little complicated for PDA in our endorsements. And we have all the way down in 50 a new candidate called Sparky Mitra. Again, a third candidate we were unable to bring onto our town hall. And apologies for Sparky Mitra all the way down in San Diego for not having the opportunity. We endorsed her relatively recently, and we just were unable to bring her onto our town hall. So that is down in California 50. And of course, we have in the 22nd district, and again, along with my vein, a very, very competitive race. Only in this one, my vein likely, hopefully, will be lifted up into the runoff against the incumbent in the 7th. In the 22nd, we are dealing with a Republican incumbent who will get into the runoff. And two Democrats are neck and neck. Randy Villegas, who's a fantastic progressive who we had on the town hall a few weeks ago, up against a doctor who is anti-Medicare for all and very much a conservatively cast Democrat. And so definitely everyone you know, and this is probably the bellwether congressional district race for progressives versus moderates in the state, support Randy Villegas, an absolutely brilliant and fantastic candidate in the 22nd. Obviously, we all are going to vote in the districts we live in, so it's not too much elevating this over any other race. But along with the race in 11th, which we spoke about earlier, Connie was on the call today in California 11th, that's a close race. And our candidate is in a neck and neck with somebody that we hope will be lifted into the runoff. That is the same in the 22nd. And even more than, whereas Shaikat Chakrabarty and Connie Chan are two progressives vying to go against the moderate Wiener, this one is a progressive, Randy Villegas, against a conservative whose name I'm forgetting, but it's the doctor running in the 26th. In the 22nd. And then finally in the 26th, the candidate we had on a while ago, a fantastic candidate, up against a very conservative Democrat. But in a heavily Democratic district, there's a very good chance the Republican will take second behind. This is an open seat, but the state party has put all of their weight behind Jackie Irwin and a ton of money to be the de facto incumbent in the 26th district. And this is a very conservative Democrat, former Republican, Jackie Irwin, and she's in the state assembly. And of course, Chris Espinoza is our candidate, a fantastic candidate, and we encourage everybody to vote for Chris Espinoza. Now, I'm going to maybe publish something in the next few days, and I want everybody on the call to know as I sign off this call and we go to family time in a moment, that I'm likely going to publish something, but I may not work with a few people to publish a statement about the nature of the California Democratic Party, the progressive wing versus the moderate wing, the domination of the pro-business wing of the party by big money in California, and how people need to recognize the difference and then recognize the progressive candidates on the ballot. And if they want a Democratic Party that is in harmony with the attitudes and feelings of the Democratic Party base in the state of California, they should vote for the progressive candidate, whoever that is, in their district. And of course, at the same time, I'll say, and I will always say this, the PDA is committed because of our effectively two-party system. When we get to the fall, especially in this year's context, we have to defeat the fascists. We have to win. It's going to be a real struggle on November 3rd. We have to fight to make sure it's a clean election. In a state like California, that part's a given, but we have to win as many seats and really blue no matter who. Yes, I know that's a terrible phrase, but in November, it's the way it's got to be. I mean, if you have independents or Greens who have a chance at winning for any quirk or whatever party, that they're the candidate that can beat the Republican, and there will be independents. So almost certainly won't be any Greens. There never have been. By the way, there's been, I don't know what it is. I forget how many elections since 1946 through to the present. But there's 435 elections every 2 years for the U.S. House of Representatives. So add that up at about, under 1,000. every 4 years. So since that time, I think it's like 48,000 elections or something like that since that time for the U.S. House of Representatives. Not a single one has been won by a third party in the United States of America. This is a two-party system, and it's just the reality of what we live in. And until that changes, and we don't see evidence of it changing anytime soon, and of course, it's not going to change on the left when the alternative is the fascist Republican Party. So we got to defeat the fascists in November. That's clear. But right now in California, we have a real divide between a set of progressives running, who I think really represent the feelings and attitudes of the people in the state, of the Democratic Party voters in the state for sure. And they're basically been, you know, sort of suppressed as a force by the overwhelming domination of the mainstream of the party by big money and its sort of support for business interests, really over the capacity of Californians to lead the kind of lives that we can lead in the state, given all of its resources and beauty and infrastructure. Some of it inherited from previous generations. Is beautiful, most diverse, it's the wealthiest province slash state in the world. It might be the most diverse province slash state in the world. And we can be a beacon for the whole world here in California. But unfortunately, the mainstream of the Democratic Party is not facilitating victories for the progressive wing as should be facilitated, because that's reflective of the politics of the people. So that's what I might say. And in doing so, I don't think anybody will publish my own list of endorsements, but I'll in some way try to point people to that. And I want to say now, and this is what I'm getting to, there are a few other candidates I'll be endorsing that either aren't endorsed by PDACA or PDA. Look, I am going to encourage people, believe it or not, to vote for Angelica Duenas again running, not this time against Tony Cardenas, but against Liz Rivas. I understand PDA probably wasn't going to jump into that race because, Angelica didn't run a very spirited campaign in the primary last time when we endorsed her, and she ended up not getting into the runoff for the first time in a while. She has a shot of getting into the runoff, and the value of a candidate who's just a real firebrand like Angelica getting into that is holding Liz Rivas's feet to the fire, and that has to happen. Maybe she could even win, but more likely, it's important for when you get a candidate in a deep blue district who might sit in that seat for their whole life. We got to keep nominating and getting into the runoffs. Really, really solid, strong progressives, and right now that's Angelica in that race. So I'll be including her. That's not a PDA endorsement, but mine. And there are a few other races like that around the country, including possibly my own district. I may weigh in here in the 34th, again in the 32nd. These are Southern California districts near to me. And I know that we'll endorse against Brad Sherman if there's another Democrat in the runoff, but it's not clear who that might be in the race right now. So races like that, and then also in local and city, county, and state elections where PDACA may not have chimed in, I may chime in. That's understandable. This is a ton of candidates. It's been a crazy, crazy year in California where the redistricting made it almost impossible for any organization. And big props to Mike Thaler for the efforts he's made on behalf of PDACA and everybody in California PDA, because the redrawing of the districts has made it very difficult to see how these races, who's running, and there's been, it's very tough to have been able to stay on top of it. And there are, by the way, the mayor's race in Los Angeles is really tight. There are a bunch of really important bellwether races across the state too, in non-federal races, and there's primaries in Montana and New Jersey and in other states on the second. And with that, I'm going to sign off and thank Hem and Joe from PDA San Francisco. I want to thank Chris Bennett, PDA endorsed candidate, California's third. Michael Masuda, PDA endorsed candidate in California's fifth. I want to thank Connie Chan and Godspeed Connie Chan's election prospects up there in California 11th. And then finally to Brian Varela running in New Jersey 7th. That seemed like a long time ago. And that's it. We'll have another PDA town hall next week. We'll be after the California primary, which takes a lot of bandwidth for those of us here in California. And Mike Fox, take it away in family time. Join us next week for another PDA town hall.